I was having a discussion the other day with a group of old school gamers, people from like first, second edition kind of stuff. Like they're still playing these old editions. And I brought up the subject of 4th edition since I am running a 4th edition campaign, and I had drawn a parallel from my campaign to what they were talking about. Believe me, it was very natural. And they sort of dismissed D&D 4e as being too video-gamey, and that's why they don't play that. And they were unable to qualify this assertion in any meaningful way that isn't equally or even more applicable to other editions of D&D. Chief among their complaints was the idea of characters being like MMO characters, where you're like in a class that does one thing. Basically, they were complaining about party roles, the battlefield roles that 4e didn't invent, but did codify and acknowledge it. And that is, I think, one of the reasons why 4e gets as much hate as it does, is because it acknowledges the tropes that have existed in D&D forever, and it does them on purpose. Everyone has this idea of the classic D&D party, the fighter, the rogue, the wizard, the cleric. The fighter is up front, taking aggro. He's super tough. The monsters are banging away at him, but he's so tough he can just take it. Meanwhile, the caster, alleviated from the pressure of the enemies by the fighter, is raining down arcane destruction, acting as the artillery of the party, just really doing the damage, while the cleric heals everyone to keep the fighter up and keep everyone safe and supported. And the rogue just sort of like jumps in and out of melee, doing a ton of damage and then retreating in just this hit and run strategy. Can you think of one mechanic in 3E, 5E? I've actually not played 1st or 2nd edition, so I can't speak to that, but I'm very certain there's no tanking mechanics in those games. Basically, D&D has almost never behaved the way that we expect it to, the way that we imagine that it should. This idea of these party roles has always existed in D&D. They are a classic, they are ancient, and that is why video games do them as well. You know, do you think you think the original MMOs invented the idea of like tanking and healing and damage as roles within a group? Absolutely not. That comes from D&D. This idea that has never been fulfilled until 4th edition. Because in every edition of D&D up till that point, there's always been characters that can do everything and characters that can do nothing. Fighters and paladins, and to a lesser extent barbarians, are your classic like upfront tanky classes. Basically anyone who's forced to go into melee. They don't have any mechanics that allow them to actually tank. They don't have any way to draw aggro, and there's no special reason why they should take damage instead of someone else. 4th edition fixed both of those problems with the marking mechanics, the extra features that defenders get in order to capitalize on marking enemies, and then also the way that healing surges work. Characters with more hit points are better for the party to take the damage than someone with fewer hit points, because healing is fundamentally a percentage-based healing. You know, if I've got 40 hit points and you've got 20, healing is twice as effective on me as it is on you. So obviously I want to be the one to take the damage because it is more efficient. So this idea of party roles isn't a video gamey idea. It's a D&D idea. It's so core and fundamental to the game that we tend to forget that it started there and has been copied into video games. And we tend to assume without looking at the mechanics that it exists in the game that we play. And that's why, I mean, there's other things that people complain about with 4th edition, like the the recharge rates, the at-will encounter and daily things. I mean, that has always existed in D&D, other than like short rests. I think D&D did invent short rests. Yes. As like a codified mechanic. There may have been a few individual mechanics that recharge after a few minutes rest. But for the most part, the short rest was invented for 4th edition. But 5e has it as well. It just doesn't do it as well. But these, at will, short rest, long rest, they're in 5th edition. So, like, 5th edition is just as video gamey as 4e is, right? Right?